who is seeing a really amazing opportunity in an adjacent market, but that market is B2B and you're a B2C player, does your story need to change in order to resonate? This is a fair question, and it's something that we are going to try and address in this specific episode of ours. What we are going to try and do is look at a recent trend in the education sector and see potential hazards as well as opportunities and maybe an approach to do so. But let's see what Janavi has to say about the education sector and where she's picked up this trend from.
Yeah. So this trend is trending on LinkedIn at the moment. So amid the AI boom and everything, enterprises like Upgrad, Simply Learn, even Coursera, they are going heavy on their B2B segment now. They have realized that there needs to be an upskilling when it comes to the company employees. The companies are struggling to retain their employees because of the AI boom. Now, most of the work that the mass hirings used to do was more of grunt work or paper pushing, etc., etc., and most of these jobs are going to be replaced by AI very soon. So companies are looking for and these courses are meant for the companies to upskill their employees with the coming AI booms in different sectors, be it prompt engineering or AI ML coding or marketing and through AI ML, etc., etc. So just giving the stats, Upgrad is estimating that around in the coming years, around 30 to 35% of
Yeah.
their business will come from the B2B segment, and it's soon to touch 50-50 ratio between B2B and B2C.
Wow.
So,
So that's
yeah.
that's a big shift. So it is something which is a huge opportunity, and it is something where the market is shifting. Now, obviously, being an educator myself, I can give you a bit of an insider's perspective on the way in which this plays out.
Yeah.
So, if I add to the context, what typically happens when any organization is looking at upskilling employees, they're looking either at individual educators coming in,
Hmm.
or they're looking at create connecting you to say a LinkedIn learning, or they're looking at maybe giving each employee the opportunity to learn on their own, or then you'll have management development programs coming in from institutions, or you will have maybe a player like Upgrad or Simply Learn or whatever coming in and making their pitch to organizations. So those are the competitors who potentially can become collaborators. Sometimes people who are teaching in specific courses or institutes get called in as individual educators as well. So there's a lot of collaboration, competition, and everything happening. And a lot of the mandates are different. Now, I do understand that a lot of them are linked to improving performance. So there is something which is around performance, which seems to be the North Star for organizations
Yeah.
who are trying to upskill their employees. But what can the North Star be for an education player was what I was wondering. Right.
Yeah.
So the North Star for an education player is clearly driven by the opportunity, which is okay. I see that 50% of my market is going to be dominated by a B2B play. And so therefore I need to understand what the North Star is. The market is shifting to an adjacent market, and do the storytelling rules for say a B2B segment actually shift from a B2C segment, right? And I wonder, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's not just a shift from B2C to B2B. Earlier, the North Star for the companies was to upskill their employees. Now, I think the company's North Star itself is changing.
Hmm.
Now, looking at the recent trends, there have been mass firings in many companies, especially the FANG organizations, right?
Yeah.
It's mostly because they know that most of the jobs are going to get replaced very soon, and they want to train their models. They want to use their resources for training the AI models rather than spending 50-60 lakhs or crores a month for employees who are going to be irrelevant very soon.
Hmm.
Now with this shift, the north star of the companies is not going to be retaining employees soon enough, right? Because let's face it, at the end of the day, no matter what an HR says, nobody cares about people. It's always about money.
You're such a cynic, Janavi. You're such a cynic. I'll give you a slightly different perspective. I agree with you, by the way. There is a hidden shift that is happening within the companies themselves, which go beyond performance. But if I'm looking at the way in which, let's say, an educational player is trying to address this sort of opportunity, what they must consider is, how are people perceiving them in a B2B space, right? So over here, if I look at personas, right,
Yeah,
if I look at personas, see, the great temptation for an education brand like Upgrad, Simply Learn, whatever, they think that they have already established themselves, and a lot of people might have taken up an Upgrad course or a Simply Learn course, and they actually will recommend them to their organizations, or there'll be acceptance, or maybe sometimes the HR guy has already done a course with them. And yes, there is something around that. But I think what the key difference over here is that the persona is shifting from a B2C persona to a B2B persona, which means
yeah,
that he or she is the gatekeeper for education. So
right.
it is very difficult for me to say, yeah, I have learned from them, they're really good, and then they turn out to be bad, right? Or I've learned from them, they're not so good, but the CEO says, "Arey, but I've heard so many good things from the fellow CEO who said all these things." So it's a very weird and risky dynamic that plays out. So I think the
Yeah.
first thing which we have to consider is the shift in persona, even if it might be the same person.
No, agreed. And look, so if I was a CXO, right, in the
Yeah.
coming years, if Upgrad or Simply Learn is telling me that, see, we are going to upskill your employees, or hell, even if I am Bangalore course comes and tells me that I'm going to upskill your employees,
Yeah.
my first question will be, okay, you'll upskill them, but they are going to be relevant for me anyways.
Yeah.
Very soon enough,
Yeah.
right? So out of the 100 people, I know that 50, their jobs are not going to matter. It's not the people, right? I know the people are good, but I know the jobs will become irrelevant.
Mm.
That job will be able to get done by AI. So as a CXO, I would rather not spend money on training people for something, for a job that's not going to exist soon enough. So if I was Upgrad or Simply Learn, rather than telling a CXO, hey, we are this, we have this kind of credibility, we have these credentials, we are going to upskill your employees, I need to change my positioning to tell them why they need the human beings, why they need these employees in the coming years, despite the fact that AI is going to take up the jobs,
This is
right? So
so critical. Yeah.
it's not about upskilling employees anymore. It's about upskilling the job in itself. So right now, if you look at the websites or of Upgrad and Simply Learn, etc., right, they have different websites for consumer courses, and then for the enterprise courses, right? But if you look at the wordings, or if you look at the proposition, they are fairly the same.
Yeah.
All they have done is just change the courses, but the proposition in any case remains the same. Now this used to make sense because companies, if you look at any big B2B company, or any MNC sort of a company, after 5 years they have tie-ups with very good brand name colleges, so they want their executives to become MBAs and so on and so forth,
Yes.
right? So then it made sense that, choose Upgrad. We give you flexibility through remote working. You don't need to pay 20-30 lakhs to these MBA colleges, etc., etc. Now that proposition needs to change, and hence your messaging needs to shift from a B2C persona to a B2B persona. For a B2C, you can say stay relevant for tomorrow's job, but for a B2B, it's no longer about upskilling your employees. It is about keep those employees relevant for tomorrow's jobs, so that the humans can do what your AI cannot.
It's a beautiful way of putting it. I think what I read in the link that you'd sent was centered around performance management, right? So clearly, the education players have understood that there is a lot of things related to a company's performance and the way in which it measures itself, right? But
Yeah,
what you're saying is an added nuance to this performance, right? So here's the weird thing. I have been part of developing B2C programs as well as B2B programs, right? And
Right.
what I've understood is that when you're developing any B2B program, actually the conversations are never about the educational material itself. Okay, the conversations are always about what you're just talking about, right? Which is around the strategy which the company is going to take, right? Which is around the company's north star, the way in which the company is seeing its own north star. Where does this all fit in? Who are the influencers? What do they want? Who are the different stakeholders? What does marketing want? What does sales want? Etc, etc, etc. Now
Yeah.
if I look at just the way in which people will jump onto this trend, oh, AI, so we will skill AI, there's an opportunity in training AI for organizations. AI for what, right?
Yeah.
So is it AI for which function, which department, right? AI for which north star? What does the company want to do with its AI? Okay, what
Yeah.
is the strategic intent? So clearly, educational players will need to be strategists who are co-creating or understanding or aligning with that company's strategy itself before kind of creating a story for them, right? So I would not be looking at actually creating a story for my educational product. I would be looking at them as a partner who aligns with them based upon what you're saying. Does that make sense to you?
That's a very good point. Exactly. With the shifting north star of the company, my strategy needs to be aligned. So now this means that each my course has to be tailored for the application of a certain industry, certain sector.
Yes.
Can just not be a course on prompt engineering or a course on stable diffusion or etc. It
Yeah.
has to be, stable diffusion for a gaming company. How do you train models for a gaming company? How do you train those humans that they can understand the behavioral psychology of the creatives that go into making those generative AI models for those gaming companies.
And
So
the interesting thing is that you actually need to craft a narrative around the way in which you will engage
yeah.
with that company. So essentially, the way in which your thing is that, hey, you know what? Let me sit with you. Let me understand what you're doing, and then you can probably cost it as a part of the service that you're delivering, or
Yeah.
maybe it's a pre-sales cost, saying, okay, that's my marketing cost, I will engage with you. Whatever your business model is, you need to therefore shift from being an education player to a player which I don't know how to define it, and maybe it's quite likely that it can be developed as a partner who aligns for achieving learning goals of an organization. And it is such a risky thing to say, oh, there's a huge opportunity in AI, right? It has to shift from a very broad understanding and from a very push driven understanding, thinking that your existing brand story is going to resonate just because the brand is well known.
Yeah.
You will need to shift, and it's quite likely that you need to shift to platforms that are below the radar, right? So let me explain what I mean, right? Okay, so you explain this, and the LinkedIn trend does a big thing of it, and it's now above the radar, like, oh, education players are going for. So
Yeah.
but how are you communicating to existing companies? Okay, how are you communicating? I think each platform is an island by itself. So if you're going to look at LinkedIn, is that valuable, or is YouTube valuable, or is just a completely different platform valuable? Where does your story to for B2B actually resonate? What do you think?
Yeah, and where does your industry leader actually flock more or frequent more? Now,
Yeah.
the amazing part is, for the first time, the edtech companies, their proposition has will not be for another cog in the wheel. It will technically be for a human being.
Hmm.
Their courses have to say that we will make humans human, right?
That's a
Right
good
now,
one.
they were teaching us to go big in Instagram, learn SEO or learn digital marketing, learn coding, learn Java, etc. Right? This is something that companies need it, but this was just making people another cog in the wheel. Now the edtech companies have to tell the companies, boss, we will bring out the emotion or the feeling of your employees. We will teach your employees how to understand culture, how to understand emotions of something, which is something that the AI cannot do, no matter how much it evolves in the next 5 to 10 years. What are the skills that are never going to get taken up by an AI? The companies that are able to provide, the edtech companies that are able to provide this product proposition to the B2B enterprises, they are the ones who will get the maximum chance of penetration.
Yeah,
Because everybody right now knows what AI is going to make redundant in the next coming years.
I completely understand that is one product angle. The second product angle can be, okay, you want to retrench people. Okay, so then how do you get AI to magnify? How do you get AI to multiply? So that can be another. It really
Yeah,
depends on the strategy that your company is taking. I feel that the more I think about it, it's not just about the story, but it's about the platform that you choose. And I am banging on about this, and I'll tell you why. If I look at the way in which their existing playbook is, okay,
hmm,
people get their comfort zones. Okay, so we will have a playbook that announces this, puts it on LinkedIn, puts it, we have a, and then there is a newsletter that goes. None of that can actually work, because when you get comfortable with creating a story around a certain set of platforms and the rest of it, that's your strength. But you will need to like completely relearn. You might need to add a completely new platform, like for example a B2B event, right?
yeah,
Can potentially be or a roundtable calling various CEOs can potentially be a very wonderful platform. But for that, you need storytelling skills that stick on that platform rather
right.
than just transporting those skills. And that's easier said than done.
Right.
That's easier
In
said.
fact, B2C, your B2C proposition or the persona in itself can be the brand advocate for your B2B enterprise.
Yes.
If I'm teaching a human, if I'm teaching an employee to become, human centric in an AI era, those are the employees that are going to grow up the ladder in the next coming 1 to 2 years. Now, these are the people who'll understand the significance of those kind of courses
Yes.
or that kind of a proposition. So if I have done this kind of a course from upgrad, I would definitely, because I know its benefit and because I know that it's helping me grow up the organization, then I as an employee itself would want to hire another person who has done a course from upgrad. And slowly the word of mouth becomes another medium, another platform for you.
Yes.
uh, yeah. And then roundtable conference, definitely, I mean, till date, B2B has been known for conferences or trade shows, etc. But edtech as a platform, as an industry, has
Yeah.
never been much of a part of those trade shows. It has just been other manufacturers or other service providers. Now edtech has to be the service provider rather than just an extended arm, or as a different channel, or just as some allied kind of an industry that can help a B2B enterprise become what it is. Now it will be another sister concern of any B2B enterprise.
Wonderful. So, in order for me to wrap this up, here's what I've learned, right, in this conversation that I've had with you. The first is, don't expect your existing brand and its story to actually transport really well and seamlessly to an adjacent market or from a B2C to B2B scenario. The
Yeah,
second thing is, it's not necessary that an opportunity and a product for that opportunity is sufficient. What you
yeah,
need to actually figure out is, how do I wrap it up in a story that actually resonates. The
right,
third is, you need to look at how personas, the same people, change because of the context. Yeah. The fourth is, actually the north star of your client or your customer is more important than your own north star in this case,
yes,
because you need to shift gears here. So many lessons here and so many potential story approaches as well. I hope this was of some use, not just to the education sector, but any sort of CEO or CXO looking at adjacent market opportunities. You know,
exactly,
there's a
exactly.
lot. There's a lot
And
of gold.
that's what he
There's
said.
a lot of gold. Yeah, there's a lot of gold in there. Them there hills is what they say, but you'll need a shovel. You'll need the right shovels.
Yes, and it's very important for the companies or any service provider to call a spade a spade. And
Hmm.
like we said in the last live, right? Don't take any trend as a gravy train that you can just hop on. See how
Yeah.
you can leverage that trend for the North Star. And in
Yes.
your case, in this case, there are two North Stars. your North Star will always be dependent on the company's North Star. So if you forget the company's North Star and the spade a spade North Star, not just upskill your employees or retain your employees North Star, but
Absolutely.
the actual money making, economically viable North Star, only then will you survive the next coming 5 to 6 years.
Awesome. Well said, Janavi. And on that happy but somber note, we should let people go. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. And we will start again on next Tuesday. Sorry for missing this Tuesday, but Janavi was shifting from one town to the other, so I just had to bear with that. Sorry, but
So
that's how it goes.
bus, huh?
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.